All right, on that note, the Electoral Commission of South Africa is briefing the media on the Electoral Amendment Act implementation. Let's take you there now.
Among others, 1, the rewriting of the candidate nomination system to facilitate the participation of independent candidates and unrepresented political parties, together with a portal to enable candidates to capture the details of voters who support their candidature. 2, redeveloping the results system to facilitate the recorder of votes cast in favor of independent candidates and translating this into seats where the relevant threshold is met. 3, updating platforms and mechanisms of liaison with parties to also include independent candidates. 4, reviewing the political party funding legislation in order to include funding of elected independents. 5, to ensure enactment of consequential amendments and regulations to enable the realization of the objects of the Act. The Commission has now approved an integrated chart of electoral milestones which contains all activities and timelines that underpin preparations for the 2024 national and provincial elections. In this regard, the Commission wishes to highlight the following. Independent candidates. The Act determines that the participation of independent candidates has to take place on the following basis. 1, an independent candidate may be nominated to contest in one or more regions, but may only be elected to one seat in the National Assembly. 2, an independent candidate may only be nominated to stand in a provincial legislature in a province in which they are registered. 3, an independent candidate may only be a member of either the National Assembly or a provincial legislature. A prescribed declaration confirming that the candidate has submitted names, identity numbers, and signatures of voters who support his or her candidature will be required. And this will be in relation to the election of the National Assembly. The names must equal 15% of the number of votes required to obtain a seat for that region in the preceding election if contesting only one region. 2, 15% of the highest quotas in the preceding election if that candidate intends to contest in more than one region. Whether 15% of the highest of quotas is not achieved, that independent candidate may only contest in the region or regions as determined by the next highest quota met. In relation to a provincial legislature, 15% of the votes required to obtain a seat in the preceding election in respect of that province. Further requirements include candidates must pay a prescribed deposit. Deposits paid by independent candidates may be different from those paid by political parties. Candidates must undertake to be bound by the Electoral Code of Conduct. Candidates must sign a declaration that they are not disqualified in terms of the Constitution to stand as candidates. In respect of provincial elections, candidates must sign a declaration that they are registered in that province where they are contesting. Registered political parties that do not have seats in any legislature or the National Assembly will have to meet the same 15% quota requirement and also pay a deposit. The quota for the various regions and provincial legislatures is illustrated in a table that I will read out to you. When we look at the signature requirements for the regions, and we look at the Eastern Cape region, the quota was 77,713, and 15% of that will be required in 2024 will be 11,656. For the Free State, the quota was 75,602. It will be 15% of that will be 11,340. For Gauteng, the quota was 92,601. 15% of that will be 13,890. For KwaZulu-Natal, the quota was 86,967. 15% of that will be 13,046. For Limpopo, the quota was 75,529. 15% of that will be 11,329. From Mpumalanga, the quota was 79,499. 15% of that will be 11,924. For the Northwest Province, the quota was 71,016. 15% of that will be 10,652. For the Northern Cape, the quota was 68,474. 15% of that will be 10,271. And for the Western Cape, the quota was 88,008. 15% of that will be 13,201. The signature requirement for provinces will be as follows. For the Eastern Cape province, the quota was 30,847. 15% of that will be 4,627. For the Free State, the quota was 28,571. 15% of that would be 4,285. For the Free State, for the Gauteng province, the quota was 58,378, and 15% of that will be 8,756. For KwaZulu-Natal, the quota was 44,424, and 15% of that will be 6,668. For Limpopo, the quota was 29,044. 15% of that will be 4,358. For Mpumalanga, the quota was 39,243. 15% of that will be 5,886. For the Northwest Province, the quota was 28,084. 15% of that will be 4,212. For the Northern Cape province, the quota was 12,797. 15% of that will be 1,919. And for the Western Cape, the quota was 47,843, and 15% of that will be 7,176. In respect of the ballot papers, the participation of independent candidates in elections of the National Assembly as a consequence of the signed law has the following noteworthy implications. First, the amended act provides for an additional ballot paper in the election of the National Assembly, thereby offering voters a non-binary choice of either a party or an independent. The effect of this is that the regional and compensatory ballots are separate. In other words, two ballots instead of a single ballot, as was previously the case. The regional ballot for the National Assembly includes parties and independent candidates. I think this is important. The regional ballot for the National Assembly includes parties and independent candidates. The other national ballot contains only parties in order to restore proportionality. The ballots for the regional seats in the National Assembly will be regional specific in a manner similar to the provincial legislature ballots. The introduction of the second ballot for the election of the National Assembly results in an increased number of ballot papers to be printed without the corresponding increase in the timelines. Thus, the ballot printing window remains an immutable 28 days. The number of ballot papers for provincial legislatures remains unchanged at 1 ballot per province. This will contain the names of parties and independent candidates. Voter registration. Ahead of each election, the Electoral Commission undertakes registration drives to register new voters and to enable already registered voters to inspect, where necessary, update their registration details. These drives result in updating of the voters' roll. For this purpose, the Electoral Commission announces that it will open its network of approximately 24,000 voting stations over the weekend of 18 and 19 November 2023 to register new voters for the forthcoming elections and to facilitate the inspection of the voters' roll. Voting station-based registration represents the most equitable manner of equalizing access to the vote. Additional modalities of registration have also been implemented to facilitate continuous registration. For those with access to the internet, they may register, inspect, and update their details at any time before the proclamation of elections by visiting www.elections.org.za. Voters may also visit the local offices of the Commission in each municipality or take advantage of the various activation campaigns that the Commission will undertake in various areas to register and update their details. Other noteworthy changes to the electoral scheme ahead of the elections in 2024 will include, amongst others, the following. In the national and provincial elections, voters vote at the voting station where they are registered. However, the Electoral Act had provided for an exception. This exception was intended to facilitate the continued franchise of persons who unavoidably found themselves outside areas in which they were registered on voting day. However, over time, this well-meaning provision has been misused in a manner that may imperil improper administration of elections and create perceptions that some voters are able to vote more times than they are entitled to. The new framework now provides that those who, for unavoidable reasons, are likely to find themselves outside of their voting station of registration must give prior notice of their intention to vote at a different voting station. The Commission reiterates that with the assent of the bill, certainty has now been created in the planning framework for the 2024 national and provincial elections. Our time is short and we cannot afford any delay. Any electoral stakeholders, in fact, all electoral stakeholders, are asked to start their preparations in order to avoid missing this immutable electoral timelines. I thank you indeed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. At this point in time, I'm going to invite any questions, comments from members of the media. Please introduce yourself by name and the organization from which you come. Thank you very much, sir. Go ahead. There's a hand in front. Yes, please, you go. And there is Natasha at the back. Is there a microphone? It's fine.
Good evening. I'm Kosnatsi Shazi from Power FM News. I just have two questions. The first question is a question of clarity. So with these changes, does this mean that the electoral formula for the allocation of seats has been amended? So for example, if an independent candidate meets the threshold to get a seat in parliament, and he meets the threshold again, basically what I'm saying, what happens in an instance if an independent candidate is able to get like 5 seats in parliament just based on meeting the threshold, but because that person is an independent candidate, what will then happen to the 4 other seats? Does he now forfeit those seats? What happens to the seats of the voters? And number 2, with these changes in a short period of time, the elections are just months away, what voter education will the IEC be rolling out to the citizens of South Africa, considering that the ballot paper is going to be larger and bigger? And the chairperson did indicate that these are very big changes in a time where voters will be needed. So what voter education will you guys be doing? Thank you very much.
It's Natasha Pri from SABC News. Am I audible? Okay, sorry. And that was thought you just stressed on the issue of time. I mean, how important is it? Because you talk about additional ballot papers. It's a lot of work. Does the IEC have its work cut out? Also, in a statement released by the Presidency today, they had said that the amended act requires the Minister of Home Affairs to establish the electoral reform consultation panel. Will IEC officials be part of that panel? What? Can you hear me, ma'am? Oh yes. Okay, let me just repeat that. So there was, in a statement by the Presidency, they had said that the amended act requires the Minister of Home Affairs to establish an electoral reform consultation panel. Will officials of the IEC be part of that panel? What inputs will you be making? And just perhaps a follow-up on your online voter registration campaign that you launched earlier on this year. How's that going? How many people have registered to vote so far? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Pito Mulamani, Kaya FM. I'm not sure whether the IEC is still facing budget cuts. If yes, which specific areas will be impacted going into this 2024 national elections? Are we talking about staff? Normally the IEC will have staff expansion, voter education, all those, but I just want to find out as to which will be impacted going into the elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The questions you have put before us, we'll share here. The allocation of seats in terms of the legislatures does not necessarily increase because we have new independent and new parties. The Commission has a duty to look at the seats before an election is held that a legislature is entitled to. The seats in the National Assembly are terms of candidates, independent candidates who are popular, let me say, who muster more than the quota required for one seat, there are only one person. They will be entitled to only one seat. This is a matter we have been dealing with consistently through the process of the legislation making. What voter education will the IEC be mounting? Not only the IEC, but all of us need to mount a significant campaign to inform South Africans about these changes and what they mean for them. Time is of the essence, indeed. We are a year away from that election at the earliest opportunity, and we will have to be ready to conduct an election at the earliest opportunity. And so we welcome this enactment of the law. This, for us, was a missing puzzle in the whole equation. That's why we're able to say to you today, given what we now know, there will be a registration weekend over the weekend of the 18th and 19th of November this year. And for that, there's absolute certainty, and everything that relates to that will also follow. I missed the electoral reform CEO question. Please deal with it. And perhaps deal with the issue of budget cuts and the implications on the work that we do. I think that then deals with the questions.
Thank you very much. The law, as assented to by the President, provides for an electoral reform process. In other words, the electoral system that we have for 2024 can be seen as a transitional electoral system, because after that, a panel is constituted, and that panel will do a reform exercise around the electoral system. And it would have to structure its work such that there's a new electoral system, or rather a revised electoral system, by the time of the 2029 national and provincial elections. The panel will be appointed by the Minister of Home Affairs in consultation with the Commission. So, however, there'll be a public nomination process. So members of the public will be now allowed to nominate persons who they believe have the requisite expertise to make a meaningful contribution to the articulation of a new electoral system for the country. Indeed, there may be persons who are in the IEC and outside of the IEC who may make a contribution if such people are duly nominated. The online registration system, the campaign that we launched earlier this year worked well. It's quite popular with young persons. But the biggest input that we are procuring with the use of the online system is persons who are changing their registration details. As at the last count, I think about a month ago, we were hovering just under 70,000 new registrations via the online portal. Yes, budget cuts we've experienced, and that phenomenon is true for many other state bodies. However, our discussions with National Treasury are such that we should be in a position to give the country a quality election on the basis of the resources that have been availed to the Commission. We are not cash flushed, but I don't think the situation is so bet that we would not be able to do the functions that we need to perform.
Thank you very much. I don't see any further hands. And can I just confirm that we don't have any other comments, questions online? Anything? I think it was fine. Okay. There's a follow-up question in front, Peter. If you could just wait for the mic.
Thank you so much. How long time does the IEC need to rewrite the electoral system? There's no time, to be honest. There's no time. But how long time does the IEC need? If the IEC can say 18 months, 6 months, 10 months, but how long time do we need? Thank you.
The CEO is going to take that.
The electoral system has now been institutionalized into law. So it is clear what are the systems that are going to be used to turn votes cast into seats in a legislative assembly. So the legal part of that equation has now been sorted out. What remains for the IEC to do is to build business applications that will give practical effect to what the law provides. We have already indicated in December last year that we are commencing with the process of rewriting those business applications. And we did so on risk because of the realization that if we were to wait, we probably would have run out of time. So we took risk and proceeded to start work on the business applications even when the law had not been signed. So we've made some headway in that regard because we think that a responsible commission needed to start working even absent a signed and assented to bill. It doesn't take away the fact that there are pressure points from a timing perspective, which is why the chair was saying we've already established our integrated chart of milestones to guide the work that we need to do leading up to the elections in 2024. Time is of the essence, but if no major headways come our way, we should be able to give a country a decent election in 2024.
All right, so it looks like the signal has frozen there, but some big takeaways for us. The IEC is ready to deliver a quality election, they say. You're listening to the CEO, Sama Mabolo, and the chairperson, Masuti Moepia. Just to remind you as well, big voter registration weekend planned for the 18th and the 19th of November. There's been a lot of talk about independent candidates. It's one candidate, one seat.